Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CEO and Market Expert Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian. Some of you know me as Triangle Investor from X. Today, my guest is Terry Papineau, a fellow speculator in uranium equities. Terry, welcome to my show. It's been a while since you and I last time talked.
It's my pleasure, and cheers from Alban in the French River area of Ontario.
Cheers, Terry. Let's get started. Tell me, please, Terry, how are your views on the current uranium market and share performance?
Well, I mean, as you know, my portfolio is made up mostly of exploration companies for the most part.
Yeah.
And the exploration companies in the uranium sector have really lagged, in my opinion. They've lagged what we've seen, the movements we've seen in the spot price last year. They've lagged the positive movements we've seen in the term price this year, and they certainly lagged the producers and the developers in the space. But I think that's sort of par for the course when in natural resource investing. But how do I find the market? Well, I was listening to an interview, that you've done recently with Mike Elkin, and thank you very much for that, because that's a little jewel of an interview there.
Thanks.
But Mike described it as that elastic is being pulled tighter and tighter and stretched, stretched longer and longer and longer. And I use the analogy of the spring that's being wound tighter and tighter and tighter. And I don't know how tighter it can get, Lucian, because it just gets better day by day.
Yeah.
People are going to be tired of hearing us say that, but it's true. Although, we're not seeing it in the equities. We're not seeing real price movement like we did in 2021. And what's holding that back, I'm not exactly sure. And I don't think anyone is. But, I'm still 100% in uranium, and I'm still convinced on the thesis. As a matter of fact, the thesis is just absolutely phenomenal at this point in time. So I think something is going to happen. I think we're going to be rewarded for our patience. I just don't know when.
Agreed. You said so. You are Terry. Just to make this clear, you are still 100% uranium.
That's correct. Yeah.
You,
So, you've got Lobo Tigre. Well, you could call me Loco Terry.
Okay. Terry, what do you think about the current sentiment among uranium investors? And I mean, in the general sentiment for uranium on social medias. I don't know if you are active still in social medias and are you following, but the sentiment is really pretty low. Do you see that changing anytime soon, really?
Well, yeah, this sentiment is low. And, I've been invested in uranium equities since 2017. And yes, I'm still 100%. And during that period of time, there have been quite a few periods where sentiment is low. It's quite a roller coaster ride.
Yeah,
So you need to have a good stomach, and you need to have conviction. And
exactly.
I think that for the most part, the ones that are still around really do have the conviction. But I also think you have tourists in the space, and you have traders in the space, and the tourists, I think they'll come in when they see that uranium is a shiny object, and it's going up, so they're going to try to ride the wave up. And I think that, and then, they don't really understand it, and then they'll panic, or they come in at the wrong time. And I also think you have traders that really know that uranium is extremely volatile, and you have traders that really trade on that volatility.
Mhm.
But sentiment is certainly low. And at one point there, before yesterday, because yesterday we had a nice green day,
Yeah,
but it felt like, pre-March 2020 COVID, where, you know, December 2019, January 2020, February 2020, like we were just getting sold off and sold off and sold off. And so, even after, some things had been settled, like Section 232 petition back then was a thing.
yeah.
And, so it's just difficult to understand why this happens, but it happens in this sector, and it happens often. But what I also know is that oftentimes it'll turn quite quickly, quite dramatically, and the upside is a lot of fun. So, when will that turn? I'm not sure. Typically we see that in the fall.
Yeah.
Last year, it kind of started in August, and when Kazatomprom made some announcements, and then Cameco followed in September saying that they might not be able to reach their production targets. And then we had a really good run in the producers, the developers, and the price and the spot price of uranium for the last half of the year last year. Will that happen again this year? Um, I think so. I hope so. Like, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I
Course.
did, but I think that we're just around the corner from another leg up.
Yeah, I believe that we have to take seasonality into factor as well. Agreed. Terry, what's your take on the spot price? I mean, do you use spot price as an indicator of the uranium market status, or do you prefer long-term price as your guidance?
Well, I think that both tell sort of a different story. Like the spot price, I think a lot of people focus on the spot price because it's readily available. You could get it, every day.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's kind of your daily sentiment. The term price is more difficult to get a handle on. And I think that in listening to your interview, as I was talking to you just a while ago about your interview with Mike Alkin, I think he did a really good job of explaining, the difference between the spot and the term, and explaining that the term price, which is really a bullshit price, he calls the spot price a bullshit price, but
Yeah.
I think the term price is a bullshit price as well because as he explained, it's not the true price that utilities and producers settle on. It's the lowest price that was offered during the month for pounds that were offered for sale or that were sold. So, if right now we're sitting at $79 for the term price, well, that means that the contracts, are signed higher than that. What is that actual price? We don't know because of non-disclosure agreements. But what is really important with regards to the term price is that it's up 16% so far this year.
Yeah.
Yes, the spot price is down, but it is down, but it's found a bottom. It's hovering at around $85, $86 a pound. And I think that right now what's happening is that utilities, I think they're shell shocked. I really do. I think that there was especially the United States, the American utilities, they've had to navigate through a lot of uncertainties, starting with the Section 232 petition, then with the Russia invading Ukraine, not knowing what was going to happen. Now, finally, we know about the Russian uranium ban. Now they're trying to understand about the waivers. Although I don't think the waivers are that big a deal. I just don't. But I mean, that's me. But once they figure that out, then they need to come back to the contracting table. They absolutely have to. Again, Mike Alkin did a great job of explaining, the contracting cycle and where we're at with the term market. But if we've contracted 30 million pounds so far this year, and the average over the past 10 years was about 85 million pounds a year, but we're consuming 190 million pounds or 185 million pounds a year. I mean, that's just basic math.
Exactly.
Yes, if the contracting was 85 million pounds a year and they're consuming 180 or 185 million pounds a year, they can get those extra pounds elsewhere. But that surplus has really dried up. And the fact that the spot, I think the spot price is an indication of that, because when people were saying, "Oh, there's so many pounds in inventory, there's over 1 billion pounds in inventory, blah 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 blah," and Mike Alkin pontificated on that quite often
Yeah.
in the early days. But I mean, if that was the case, the spot price of uranium would not have gone from $18 a pound in 2017, 2018 to $106 a pound last year to fall back at $86 a pound now. It wouldn't stay there. It would go all the way back down. So, I think that that surplus that people were talking about and were worried about for years and years and years is you could throw that argument out the window. And so, I think that right now the utilities are shell shocked. They're kind of taking a breather and going, okay, well, this is our new reality here.
Yeah.
And we need to face the fact that we need to secure those pounds. There could be a shortage, and so I think that there's going to be more activity in the term market, and I think the term price is going to continue to rise, and I think the spot price will rise as well. Excuse me.
Yes. Terry, what I find interesting to discuss with you are the uranium explorers. You are one of my rare guests that I can talk all day explorers. I have a list of some uranium explorers and I would like to cover them. So give us your comment on the companies I will mention, some pros and cons. Do you hold them or not? And do you maybe have them on your radar? I want to start with ISO Energy. What's your take on ISO Energy?
I love the company. I mean, and I also really I think that Phil Williams is a very savvy CEO. I like what he did with Consolidated Uranium. I was a Consolidated Uranium shareholder. He did very well. That company did very well for me. There's a few companies from that were spun off, which I'm a shareholder of now. There's
That's my
also
next question for Premier American Uranium.
yeah.
Please continue on ISO.
So, but just to talk about ISO itself, ISO itself was my biggest winner. I've told this story before, but I started looking at that stock. I think it was 2018. I wanted to buy it in this July 2018 at 18 cents. And just when I was ready to put my bid, it went up to 22 cents. And I said, it's going to go back down. And I just watched it go up and up and up for the next 1, 2, 3 weeks. And finally I said, okay, I better buy this thing because it looks good. And the first shares I bought in ISO were at 40 cents.
Great.
So it's done fairly well. But what I like about it is that I think that people just don't understand the potential in this company. For example, they have the Hurricane deposit. That deposit, I think, is going to be valuable at some point in time. It's about 50 million pounds. The grades are opted the very, very high grades, the average grades. But what I think people don't understand is that it's right on the border of their property. And right on the other side of the border of their property is Cameco.
Yeah.
And for the first time that I can recall in all of the times that I've ever listened to a Cameco conference call, their last conference call, someone asked them about what they're doing on the other side of that Hurricane deposit property, and they'd been drilling there. And so, if they're drilling there and they're just being so quiet about it, just not saying too much about it, but you have to, I guess what they indicated is that I think they said something like they like what they're seeing without really being, too, explicit about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at some point in time, Cameco, the McArthur River and Cigar Lake, they're going to run out of uranium.
Yeah.
And sure, Cameco has a lot of other greenfield properties that they could go explore on, and they've got a couple other things that they could look at, and brownfield and past producing mines that they can restart. But they're going to want some world grade deposit to be able to continue feeding their mills. And at some point in time, they might be looking at that Hurricane deposit and going, it's right next door. We want to develop the property, the deposit, if there's a deposit there, and it would just make sense for them to buy that deposit. And so, the metric that I sort of use is that in the last bull market, there's some deposits that were some deals happened in the uranium sector where companies were paying $10 a pound to buy deposits that were in the ground, $10 per pound in the ground. That was the last uranium bull market. Okay, so if you use $10 a pound, which is psychotic, but let's say Cameco is interested in hurricane and they approach ISO and they say, hey, listen, we'd like to buy your hurricane deposit. We're going to offer you $10 a pound for that deposit. They're going to say, yeah, no, thank you. We'll take $40 a pound. And let's say they settle on, I'm just using a number here.
Of
Let's say
course.
they settle on $20 a pound. $20 a pound. So they got 50 million pounds there. Well, just that deposit alone at $20 a pound is worth $1 billion.
Billion. Yeah.
And that's more than the market cap of the company right now. But that's just one part of ISO.
Yeah.
The second part of ISO is that they have other properties that they can explore on, which they've started to explore on this year, which they might find another deposit. I mean, this is speculation, but they do have other projects that they can work on and do exploration work and possibly find something else. That's number two with that this company offers. Number three is they are the only company that has a deal with Energy Fuels
Fuels.
to use the White Mesa Mill.
That's
There's
correct.
so much tweeting going on about this company can get an offtake agreement with Energy Fuels to use the White Mesa Mill. Well, ISO has that agreement. They purchased some past producing mills from Energy Fuels, and that came with the deal to use the mill. And so people just don't understand that right now they're actually doing some work on these past producing mines to get them into production. And at some point in time, when it makes sense, they're going to start producing uranium and shipping the stuff to the White Mesa Mill and have uranium to sell. And Phil Williams has already been fairly explicit on that. They're not going to produce enough to sell into term contracts, but they're going to produce some pounds to be able to sell into the spot market at a time when I think the spot price is going to be much higher. So they could be, actually producing revenue. I don't think it's going to happen next year in 2025. Is it going to happen 2026? I don't know. I don't, maybe not, but beyond that, they could certainly be a producer and be a cash revenue making machine with those pounds selling into the spot market. So that's number three. Number four, which I think is completely overlooked. They
Coastal.
have, yeah, that's right. They
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
Coles Hill in Virginia, which is the largest undeveloped uranium deposit, known uranium deposit
Yeah.
in
It's
the United
overlooked.
States.
Yeah.
And right now, that deposit is not being factored in or it's being discounted because it's in Virginia. There's a uranium mining ban in Virginia. But given the change in sentiment in the United States regarding nuclear, given the need for uranium, given the push by the U.S. government and companies and states in the United States to build their own nuclear fuel cycle and nuclear fuel cycle capacity, domestic capacity. And at some point, Virginia might say, you know what, we need we need the jobs from this uranium mine, and so that ban might be lifted at some point in the future. So that's worth something too. So I just think that I think ISO is undervalued because of all those factors.
Yeah, it has some brilliant assets. I agree. With mentioning hurricane deposits, the people who were behind the discovery are now in the different company in Cosa Resources. I don't know if you hold them. Do you have any opinion on Cosa Resources? I mean, the team is really originated from the ISO Energy when they discovered the hurricane deposit. Do you have a take on Cosa?
I do not, and listen, just so you know, I've done a bit of research, but at some point in time, I wanted to pare down the number of holdings I had. And not this is not a comment about COSA or any other company, but the companies that I invested in or speculated in, which is the correct word when it comes to exploration, are companies that survived, that were in the bull market,
Mhm.
the bear market, that survived the bear market, that were able to acquire, properties. I think most of the best projects and most of the best properties were acquired during that time. You know, since 2020, specifically, let's say, or 2019, we've seen new uranium companies enter the sector, and I'm not saying that what they have is not
I
good,
understand.
or
Yeah.
I believe that the best projects, the best properties to be obtained have been obtained, and I'm positioned in those companies. That's not to say that any new company will not do very, very well and maybe discover something, or look at past drilling results and interpret them in a different manner, and find that there's more stuff here, and you know, and
Yeah, I
that might not
understand.
even matter. You know, when money returns to the sector, the general investing public might just throw a whole bunch of money at a company just because of the way that they've marketed themselves, that the social, you know, media people blow up the company, and people throw a bunch of money in there, and there's nothing in the company, but that's just the way it is. So that's one of the reasons why I don't own all the companies, and I haven't done full research
On
on
all.
all of them.
Yeah.
So
Because
I
there
just
are
want to
like
comment.
80 companies, junior
Yeah.
companies in the space. You can handle them all, of course. My next question would be if the spin-out from Consolidated Uranium, Premier American Uranium. What's your take on them?
I mean, Mike Alkin, Tim Rotolo, you know, they you can't get better than that in terms of understanding the uranium investment thesis. I think they position themselves very well with Sachem Cove, which is a fund that buys uranium and buys uranium companies in the uranium sector. They buy physical uranium, and now they have a company, they have a vehicle in which to express it. They're in the United States. I think the United States, and specifically the United States exploration, development, and producing companies will do very well, because you know the sentiment around nuclear and the uranium industry in the United States is as strong as it's ever been. And I think that because these companies are American, I think they're going to get maybe a little bit more love and attention than companies outside of the US. So yes, I continue to be a shareholder, and
Okay.
I will hold on to that one for a little while still.
Okay, the next on the list is Exploration Weather, and they're on the market for quite some time. Forum Energy.
Unfortunately, that's one that I didn't enter into. So, and you know, I just I don't want to comment on it,
Sure,
not because it's a bad company.
sure, sure. Whenever you don't want to comment, just say I don't want to comment. No problem.
Okay.
Skyharbour.
Yeah, Skyharbour is one of those companies that was around in the bear market, is one of those companies that I think it's very well managed. Jordan Tribble is doing a great job. I think that they were very savvy early on. Of course, they have David Cates from Denison Mines that's
Yes.
involved. Denison is also been involved in that company. But I think that they were extremely savvy very early on, in the sense that they acquired a lot of projects, and they also they use the prospect generator model, where you know they're not diluting shareholder value on a regular basis because they need to go to market and raise money. What they do is they have a property, they'll option it off to another company. That company will give them some cash, will give them
Yes.
some shares. They, you know,
Hmm.
and then if something, and they need to continue to work that property for, you know, a period of 3 4 years, and continue to issue shares, continue to issue cash. So the model is great. They've got a lot of projects. They've continued to acquire projects recently, so that they'll be able to continue doing the prospect generator model. And it's just retained its value in you know, it's increased in value since I purchased it. I'm a shareholder, and it's still doing very well, and I think it's going to continue doing well.
Okay, the next one would be Baselode Energy. I saw a chart of Baselode few days ago. The Baselode is sitting at a 4-year low. Why is that, Terry?
Well, I think that's a good question. I'm a shareholder in Baselode, but James Sykes, I've known James Sykes quite a long time now, and so his passion is uranium mining. Like, he's a uranium mining nerd. Okay,
Yeah,
he's a great guy, but
yeah, yeah, I agree.
and his one of his life goals was to discover over 1 billion pounds in uranium. Like that, like, you don't meet a lot of people. Hey, what do you want to do in life? I want to discover 1 billion pounds in uranium. So it's kind of, so he's really passionate about that. His team is very good. They have some interesting properties. I think they're a bit of a victim of timing, in the sense that on their Hook project in the summer fall of 2021, when the price of uranium started going higher, they made a discovery. They hit uranium, so they made the Akio discovery, and that timing was great for them because they made that discovery at a time where the price of uranium, the spot price of uranium was surging. The whole uranium sector was blowing up with green. Like, we were making 10, 11, 15, 18% a day during that period. And that was a fun time. And so their share price went up very quickly and very, and pretty high, to over like about $1.20 a share back then.
Yeah,
And since then, it's been, it's not been easy for the explorers, number one. And number two is, I think that the market is interpreting that the Akio deposit might not be big enough to be mined economically. It might not be that valuable, and the company Baselode has not come out with the size of the deposit yet. They need to. I think that at the end of this summer they'll have enough drill holes in there to be able to issue the size of the deposit. And I just don't think that gets the market excited. So and what I've found with the explorers is that, it's a lot of people, like I was saying, maybe traders or whatever, when they hear like a good whole result, like for example, CanAlaska is a result, is an example of that in January. But there's a good result here. Well, while the price is going up, let's jump on that bandwagon. They drive the price up, and then when the next drill results come out, if they're not exactly what people were expecting, then they get off the bandwagon. So I think that that's really been the story with Baselode. They've issued a news release this week, and they're hitting radiation again on their summer drill program at Akio. But does that mean that deposit is going to be bigger? Like, are they, they're trying to find another pod as well. So, if they do find another pod, then that's going to make it bigger. They also mobilized a second drill to drill other areas of the Hook project. So they're drilling Akio, and they're drilling elsewhere on the property because they believe that they like what they're seeing. So they believe there's really good targets there that need to be drilled. And I think that if they do come out with a good drill result, they'll do very well. But I like the company. You know, I like a company that does what they say they're going to do. And they're raising the money, and they're taking that money and they're putting it into the ground. Like, I speak to James on occasion, and he's not using the money to for a lifestyle kind of
agreed.
company.
Yeah.
No. So that's exploration business, and unfortunately the share price has suffered. But I mean, that's the exploration business, and that could turn around quite rapidly with one good drill hole.
Yeah, agreed. James is a really, really nice guy and a great geologist, and really, in my book, he's done it all right. So I believe that Baselode was maybe a victim of high expectations. That's my take for Baselode. You know how the average uranium investor, when he sees that some company has a grade of 1.5 in the Athabasca, no, he expects 45% of U3O8, and when he
Yeah.
sees 2%, it's like, oh my God, that's a failure.
Yeah, I
So
think there's something else that needs to be said about baseload and ACU, is that James believes that, he's trying to find a uranium deposit that can be drilled quickly.
yeah,
And we've seen with NextGen and Fission and even MacArthur River and Cigar Lake, it takes years and years and years because these are complex. Well, ACU is right down, like it's very shallow. It could
it
actually
is.
be
Yeah,
mined open pit. Now, there's no feasibility study that's been done on that yet. We don't know how big that deposit is, and you need to bring a road in, you need to bring power in, blah, 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 blah. Like, can it really financially be done? We don't know, but it's a possibility.
of course.
And that's one of the advantages of the Akio deposit. And if there's enough uranium there, maybe it will be mined someday. I don't know. It's too early to tell.
Of course. What about we were mentioning high grades? F3 uranium has really some hits, high grades. Do you hold F3 uranium? What's your take on the company?
I do. And F3, as many people know, was spun out from Fission. Its original name was Fission 3.0, which people didn't understand, so they changed it to F3. I mean, the team there's a kind of a love and hate relationship with the team. Um, I don't want to get too much into that, but one thing is that they've been successful in finding deposits. They've done
That's a
it.
fact.
And the F3, their deposit at Patterson Lake North, what they've done is they've found one pod, and people, like geologists, describe the deposits in the Athabasca Basin as pearls on a string. So, uranium is moved through fluids, and when there's a place or a cavity or a place where it can be deposited, it gets deposited over time, and then it might keep moving on in the fault and all that kind of stuff. So there might be more than one deposit, or pearl or pod, I should say. So now they're trying to locate another one. They really like everything that they're seeing. The more that they're drilling, the more information that they obtain. So, will there be a world-class deposit there? Well, we're all waiting with a bated breath
Yeah.
to see if there is. But I also like what they've done. So they did a property swap with CanAlaska. So they had some property on the eastern side of the basin that CanAlaska liked, and CanAlaska had some property on the western side of the basin that was adjacent to where the Patterson Lake North property is. So they did a swap, which is I think it's
Good one.
strategic for both companies. And they also had a vast, like a very rich portfolio of projects. So I'm actually happy that what they've done is they formed F4. And what they're going to do is they're going to retain, I think it's 3 or 4 properties that are around the Patterson Lake North property that will stay with
F3.
F3, and the other properties will be transferred into F4. So F4 has already been formed. Now we need to the shareholders need to vote if they vote for this transfer, and if it goes through, then the F3 shareholders will receive 1 share for every 10 shares of F4
F4.
of F4. So that might occur this summer sometime. It'll need the venture exchange approval. So that's so I'm holding on to that one. And again, I'm a speculator and an optimist. So uh, hoping that they find that world-class deposit there on their Patterson Lake North property.
Yeah, what about Dev's other company in US, Wyoming, Strathmore Plus Uranium? Do you hold them?
I'm not a shareholder.
Okay, any comments? Okay.
No.
We have another stock that juniors have really bleeded throughout the couple of months, but one company specifically is bleeding all the time, so to say. That is Standard Uranium. I know that I will not ask you about your history with Standard Uranium. Tell me your current view on the Standard Uranium story.
Well, thank you for asking, because there's often a lot of comments regarding Standard Uranium.
I know.
At one point, someone interviewed me, and at that point in time, it was Antonio that interviewed me, and he said, "Well, name your best explorer at the moment?" At that point in time, I compared Standard with the other Athabasca Basin explorers who did not have a deposit. So trying to find, and the valuation of Standard was lower. So I said, right now, my top pick would be Standard for those reasons.
I understand.
And, had Standard hit uranium, the story would be completely different today, but that's the exploration business. And, I have a relationship with the CEO as well, John Bay. And, they had a pretty smart marketing strategy back then where they sent T-shirts and hats, and
I
you know,
have one.
I would put the hat on and take photos of myself with, different places in the world, just to support the company, to support John. And so a lot of people on social media have associated me as a Standard guy. But anyways, unfortunately, they did not hit uranium, and they went through a very difficult phase there where the market cap of the company went down and quite low.
Yeah.
And so what they've done since then is they've adopted the project generator model as well. So they had a few projects, and they were able to option off. I think it's two of the projects. And what that's done is that, they're also the operator in terms of, so they optioned off the project, but they'll do the explore all of the necessary preparatory work. Then they'll do the exploration work. They'll receive cash. They'll receive shares. So, and that's given revenue to the company to be able to explore on their own property, which they'll be doing this summer. And so, I think that they've transitioned well. I think that was a strategic transition for the company at the right period in time. And I hope that they'll do well. Like I'm still a shareholder of Standard. I've sold off some of my shares in the company. I'm not as big of a
You were.
shareholder as I used to be,
Mhm.
but and again, I'm an optimist. Anything can happen in the exploration business, and I truly hope that they do find something valuable. So that's my take on Standard.
Yeah, there is one stock that suffered more than Standard Uranium. I believe that is Kraken Energy. The ticker is UUSA, I believe. They went like from $1.50 to 8 cents, something like that. Do you hold them and do you have any opinion on them?
I do not hold them, and I don't have an opinion.
Okay, what about one of the biggest explorers in the Athabasca and in Nunavut, Ata Energy?
I don't hold them either.
Okay, CanAlaska?
Yeah, CanAlaska, I'm a shareholder. Again, a company that was around like for quite some time. They were there for the bear market. The Peter Daisler at the time was a CEO. He brought on Corey Bellick, who's now the CEO. Corey came from Cameco,
Yeah.
a rich history in exploration and uranium mining. And again, a CEO that puts his money where his mouth is. They do what they say they're going to do. They put the money in the ground. They've been they've been, for years they've been talking about there's something and they hit in January. So, and then the what they hit is quite remarkable. It's fairly deep, but it's incompetent rock. There are mines that are deeper than that, but right now what they need to do is they need to continue hitting there, so we're all waiting with the bated breath, like for the next news release and what they're if they've hit something, but they're not just a one-trick pony. They also have um, partnerships with Denison Mines where they're hitting on another project. So that's interesting for another company like Denison Mines to come in there means is good. It means that another company validates what you're seeing, and they're willing to put money behind it and resources behind it, which is good. They're also a prospect generator where they've optioned off some projects. So it's a great exploration company with great projects, great potential, great management, doing what they say they're going to do, putting money in the ground. So we're just waiting.
Yeah. Terry, what's your take on Fission Paladin deal? Do you believe that we will see bigger offer for Fission?
I'm not currently a Fission shareholder. And I think they've got a good deposit there. And my take personally, I think it's worth more than what Paladin put up for the project. And it's an all share deal, which some people might like, which is fine. I think Paladin has great management. I think it's good for Paladin. I think it's worth more than what was offered, and I do hope that another company will come in and make another offer. And like the value of the deal is dependent basically on the value of the Paladin share. So like I mean, I'm going to leave the shareholders, to make up their own minds, but I think it's worth more than what Paladin offered.
Okay. I have two more questions, then I will let you go. What developers, Uranian developers, do you hold in your portfolio? You said you have Denison, I believe. Do you have some African names, Global Atomic, DPL, Ogoviex, Paladin?
I hold Global Atomic and Goviex.
Okay. What about NextGen or Anchor Energy, some US, or Enfield Energy, some US near-term producers,
I
developers?
hold Energy Fuels and Uranium Energy Corporation, and I'm still kicking myself in the rear end for not jumping on the Encore Energy bandwagon. But that's one of the shares where I really like the company, and I knew that Bill Sheriff was the guy, but it's the stock price was going higher and higher and higher, and I didn't want to chase it, and I just lost out.
Do you hold some Australian uranium listed companies?
No, I do not.
None. Final question. What is your exit strategy when it comes to uranium explorers? What gains are you looking to achieve?
That's a good question. Um, I don't look at it in terms of gains. I think that certainly my portfolio will be able to at least 2x from here, maybe more than that in terms of depending on what happens, of course, and depending on how high the uranium price is going to run, how hot this sector is going to get. At I at first when I did start investing in uranium, I was thinking about returns, but I thought at that time that the bull run would be just shorter lived, like that it would kind of be like something that occurred in the 2005 2007 span. But now I don't think that anymore at all. I don't think it's going to be a 3 to 5 year thing. It's going to be like a decade thing. And I think that it's going to be quite interesting because I think the price of uranium is going to go higher. I don't think that $150 spot price is unreasonable. I don't, I think we might even see higher than that at some point in time. I think that the term pricing might be right in the $150, $200 range. So I'm waiting to see those price confirmations first. And then I'm going to keep monitoring to see, well, okay, is the thesis still intact? Is it improving? Is it deteriorating? And at that point in time, I'll take a look at the different names in my portfolio and assess them one by one and say, okay, maybe I should close out this position. Maybe it's time to take 10% or 20% or 50% off the table on this position, but keeping a certain amount because I think that there's still room to grow. So it's going to be kind of that analysis on a case by case and on a day by day kind of basis in terms of, but it will not be to try to say, okay, I think we've hit the peak now. I'm selling everything.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be many different decisions along the way. At a certain point, like let's say one of the explorers does hit a deposit and is bought out. Well, I might, if the return there is what I was looking for, and I think it will be the peak, I might close out the position, sell a certain percent. It's just very difficult to say. It's not a set strategy. If
Yeah.
this happens, then it triggers this action. That's not my way of thinking.
Good answer. Let's wrap it up. Terry, thank you for coming to my show. It was a great chat and good luck.
It's my pleasure anytime.